Not too far from that place is our satellite studio, if you like, and that's where we find our Bongi Zwane and our politics editor, Mzwandile Mbeche, who also join us now live. And we've heard since Friday, when the news broke that the former minister had died, all manner of tributes, and we imagine, of course, much of that is going to take place, guys, throughout the course of this morning.
A very good morning to you, Ayanda, and to our viewers. Definitely, that's exactly what's going to be taking place here. And you think about the fact that, a common and a recurring theme when a number of people talk about the late former minister Pravin Gordhan, they talk about him as a man who was selfless, who fought for freedom, who believed in South Africa as a country, who worked very hard for this nation. At the same time, you listen to his colleagues who say that he was so forthright that sometimes he has to go back to them and apologize. And, listening to Gwen Ramokgopa, the Treasurer General of the ANC, speaking at his memorial service in Gauteng, she was saying that, one of the moments she remembers was when he would be so forthright and trained in diplomacy, but not so diplomatic, and then would go back to them afterwards and say, I hope you understand that I was not trying to be rude. I was, in fact, trying to make sure that you get my point and what I was trying to convey. So certainly this is a man, as you say, would have been wearing many hats. And I'm not alone. I'm sitting here with my colleague Mzwandile Mbeche, who's our politics editor. And Mzwa, it's so interesting to, hear a number of people talk about him as a struggle veteran, all these many hats. But there's one thing. They talk about how direct he was. He never shied away from making his feelings and views on a matter known. And I suppose a lot of people know that, and it cuts across from friend, family, and everybody.
Even journalists.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, no, those who have interacted with him, so they'll tell you that if, let's say, you either would have said something that he doesn't agree with, or you wrote something that he doesn't agree with, he would confront you to say, but that's not how you should do it. I mean, even in the questions, I remember when he was finance minister, and then he would, finance minister would go to forums like the World Economic Forum. So in the course of covering the president, so you would then speak to the minister first, who's still waiting for the president. I mean, you may not be very well versed in the economic related stuff, and then I'd remember with my colleagues who would be asking certain questions, and then they would say, you actually should phrase it in this way because this is what it means. So I understand exactly what they mean when they speak about that. Of course, that perhaps showed how committed he was to this country, to the struggle. The fact of the matter, Bongi, is that here is someone who could have made a living very nicely without bothering. He had an education, he had a very good, he had a pharmacy. So he could do what he wanted with his life without bothering himself with the politics of the country. But if then you know that your betterment alone is not sufficient, you need to do better, you do those sacrifices. And I think that's the thread that is coming through. Of course, he was not perfect. Anyway, who is perfect? No one is perfect. But the fact of the matter is that you could see in that loyalty from what he did in terms of sacrifice. I mean, there are so many, even comrades who at some point crossed paths with. So they are able to say, this is someone we're able to rely on in order to be able to further the struggle.
And you speak about, him and dedicating his life to South Africa. A lot of people are reflecting on the fact that right now, this is a man who had retired just shortly before, announcing his retirement just shortly before the elections. And this is a time potentially that his family would have looked forward to spending with him at home, but that time has now been cut short.
Oh, well, at some point, I guess we are just human beings. We don't know what tomorrow brings for us. We make our own plans, but the higher powers will always have his own plan. So the fact of the matter, in fact, as even you hear some of those who are close to him, Bongiwe, they are basically saying one of the things that really they felt mattered when they interacted with him in his final days or even in his final moments is to say he was content with what he had done during his life. And that tells you, as much as people or those close to him or people would still want to be with him. So he knew that he had a contribution to make, and he made that contribution. Remember, the contribution you make can never be enough. That's why if you become a billionaire today, Bongiwe, tomorrow you'll want to be a multi-billionaire, because whatever contribution you make, you feel you still need to do more. But as long as you know that you tried your best, there was recognition for that, it does give you a bit of solace. I mean, for me, those final moments when those close to him say, I mean, he basically said, I did what I could.
And I can see through the corner of my eye, Mzwai, the SARS Commissioner, Edward Kisweta, who I'm hoping will be able to join us for this conversation just shortly, as we reflect on, the life of the late former minister. But he played another role at SARS, one that he's been credited with, to say that he built that institution and really just got it to where it is. But just for a second, I'd like us to hold it there, and we'll link back to Jade Polser, who is standing by with another guest there inside. And Jade, of course, a lot of focus here at the Inkosi Albert Luthuli, Convention Center, as we are now waiting for that hearse to arrive as the family is making their way here.
Well, yes, Bongiwe, and as many guests start arriving, I have with me right now the former Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Nomusa Dube-Ncube. Now, Premier, we know that although Pravin Gordhan served as a minister, his roots were here back at home and would often come home and plow back into the many communities. I know I spoke to some ladies in Phoenix who said that he would actually go there and always mobilize, make sure that child welfare is looked after. Just your reflections on today.
Oh yes, indeed. My fond memories were when you will come back and we will go to Coastlands and we'll sit there and we'll discuss about the communities. He loved to discuss about the child welfare issues, about how can we assist the welfare communities, the child welfare in Chatsworth, as well as other community organizations, to make sure that at least they are still assisted. As you know, that government does not assist as much as we used to assist, and he will ask us to mobilize business communities to ensure that at least they are still assisted, because they play a big role in assisting communities with welfare support. And we'll sit there in Ridge Road and we'll have coffee, and sometimes we'll have a nice curry, and we'll discuss about how even at the first democratic elections, how we were taught about the constitution of the country. I remember Zak Yaqub was the one who taught us about the constitution. Zak Yaqub was one of the people who were drafting the constitution of this country. And at the time, I think we were young people who were being taught about democracy, who were being taught about how the country was going to change from the apartheid to the democratic dispensation. And at the time, we were even taken to Netherlands to go and be educated about democracy and the changes, and we will discuss about those times, how we've changed from being young activists to being in government and to be where we are now. But also we were discussing about what will it be when we are not in government. What role can we play now in strengthening the communities, but also in plowing back to government? Because what we are also looking at now is, when looking back at from having been in government and being outside government, you can see now that there's a lot that we can now even contribute to government to say, actually, we can even play more role, active role, being outside of government. And those really, for me, will be moments that I'll cherish a lot. And I've got a lot to learn from a lot of lessons that he would always keep quiet and will look at me and say, you've got a lot to learn.
You know, you spoke about Zach Jacob. I actually spoke to him last night at the memorial, a retired constitutional judge, and he said to me that the former minister would actually come to KZN and drive his old Toyota around, and no one would know that that was Minister Pravin Gordhan, and it just goes to show how humble he was as well.
Yes, definitely. And he will even go to his pharmacy because his pharmacy, by the way, was one of the areas that where you would see the pharmacy in the front, but behind the scenes there was a lot of activities that would happen. And there was an old man called Farouk, and Farouk was one of the activists that was mobilizing for the membership of the ANC. In fact, he was one of the persons that would mobilize people to join the African National Congress. And part of the membership of the ANC used to stay in that pharmacy. And people never knew that there were membership forms and things that are happening in that pharmacy of Pravin Gordhan. And so really, people do not know, how much a leader Pravin was. So that's why sometimes when you see the leadership, how strong and how important it was for Pravin to stay the course of being honest, of being ethical, because he knew how hard we had to fight for us to achieve this democracy, but also how many people died for us to achieve this democracy that we have to achieve today. So really, in honor of Pravin, I do believe and I pray that all of us fight very hard to ensure that we rid our country and our government of corruption and corrupt elements amongst us and amongst our communities.
Thank you very much there. Former Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Nomusa Dube-Ncube, just sharing her fond memories of Pravin Gordhan, Bongiwe and Zwa, and also touching on the fact that he used his pharmacy to mobilize and get caters, and whilst he was underground as well. You would know that time was very tumultuous, but also speaking about the opportunities that he afforded many of the youngsters, including herself, traveling to the Netherlands with Pravin Gordhan under his leadership, and also learning so much from him. I'll hand back to you, Bongiwe and Zwa.
Right, thank you very much. My colleague there, Jade Paulson, speaking to the former Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Nomusa Dube-Ncube.